and welcome to an evening of frank conversation here on Hard Copy, coming to you from our studios in Abuja. I'm Maupe Ogun Yusuf. Elections in Nigeria are oftentimes likened to war, and for good reason too. In April this year, the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, revealed that more than 1,149 people, including INEC employees and security personnel, lost their lives in 3 elections held in 2011, 2015, and 2019. It was to help stem this that a non-governmental organization, the National Peace Committee, came into being in 2014 to, in its words, respond to emerging threats occasioned by the 2015 general elections. Thankfully, the 2015 elections were largely peaceful, with the incumbent President Goodluck Jonathan conceding defeat and putting a call through to his then-opponent, Muhammadu Buhari, a move many credited for dousing the palpable tension in the air at the time. Since then, the National Peace Committee has intervened in many elections, encouraging politicians to sign a peace accord and be good sportsmen and women. In recent days, however, there have been cause for concern. Clashes have been reported among the supporters of 2 of the major leading political parties, with accusations and counter-accusations following suit. And there's concern coming from no less than the INEC chairman about growing intolerance by party actors, where some of them hold influence. How can we hold politicians to account and ensure that they abide by the code of conduct they have pledged to hold themselves to? Reverend Father Atta Barkindo, Executive Director of the Cooker Center and Secretary of the National Peace Committee, is my guest tonight. Father, welcome to Hard Copy.
Thank you, Mark, for having me.
Well, I'm sure that, when we woke up this week to reports of clashes in Zamfara, I mean, even media houses were shut down in that state, clashes in Kaduna, and then only recently, just yesterday, even though it was not at a political rally, some clashes in Lagos as well. I'm sure that these reports must have given you cause for concern. How did you receive them?
Actually, we are very sad because this has happened barely some weeks or days even after the signing of the peace accord, where most of the political parties have come together to agree to abide and comply, with most of the rules and regulations. So it's really a very sad incident. At our office, we have a team that has been gathering, all these incidences that are happening. I was even in touch, with my bosses to alert them as to what can be done. We are already working on a press statement, and thank God I've just appeared here to remind, the political parties, and especially those who sign on to this accord, that please, there are rules and regulations, and we expect them, to comply. One of the most difficult things, particularly for politicians, is simply to play the game, by the rule. But we have to do that, because I think that, in my opinion, these things have not just happened. There have been, previous incidences in the past, especially during the off-season, elections, either in Kogi State, either in Anambra, and even in I think, Oshuno Ekiti, where there was an attack, on the candidate of the Labour Party. So I think that these things are accumulating, and if we don't work together as Nigerians, not just the political parties, we are very worried as to what could happen, in 2023.
Now, some people will say that the peace accords have come, I don't know, will I say rather early this year. People would have thought that it would have been happening maybe much closer to the elections. Is there a reason why you have decided to host them, that's make them sign the accords much earlier than, we normally would have seen?
I think that in the wisdom of the Peace Committee, we actually foresaw some of these incidences. And that is why the committee decided to have 2 peace accords. One is to ensure that they carry out peaceful campaigns and rallies, no spread of fake news, no disinformation. People do so with civility and decency, with respect for each other, because at the end of the day, Nigeria is our country. So the first peace accord is to commit them to that decency and civility in presenting issues rather than personal attacks. So the second accord will likely come in February.
Oh, so there's going to be another accord?
Absolutely. There will be a second accord shortly, before the elections, because at that level, the tensions are built up. There's anxiety, there are worries as to even whether people will actually accept the outcome of the vote itself. And even if they do, what capacity do they have to control their followers? And the spillover, what will happen? So we want to commit them to accepting the outcome of the vote. The first one is committing them rather to peaceful and decent campaigns. And then the second one is accepting the outcome of the vote. And if they are aggrieved, then there are other institutions of judicial processes that can actually address, their grievances.
You've raised one of the questions I was going to raise with you, which is when you commit this candidate, to sign a peace accord, you assume that by them signing, they have influence on their followers and can exert that influence in ensuring that their followers, will I say, toward the path of peace and, toward the path of civility. But oftentimes, can you really say that if violence occurs, as we have seen occur at the PDP rally in Kaduna State or that of Zamfara, can we really say that we will hold the candidates accountable for that?
Absolutely, they could be held accountable in different ways. For us at the Peace Committee, we want to ensure that these things does not snowball into massive violence, maybe as we see in 1994 in Rwanda also. We just don't want Nigeria to become, because if Nigeria does become to that level, of course, even without the Peace Committee, people must be held to accountable, either within Nigeria or even the international community. We hope that Nigeria will not get to that stage. But we accept that there are challenges, and beyond just talking to executives of the party and senior people within the party, there are other programs at the Peace Committee that we are running. We are working with political parties. We are providing training for youth, for women, in terms of political participation and peaceful elections, and how youths can be ambassadors of peace during elections.
Okay, so
that's the little we can contribute.
You're trying to get the larger, let's say, populace more involved in this. However, I want to go back to the question of accountability. Of course, where people have been proven to, how will I put it now, have a direct influence, encouraged, perhaps even sponsored acts of violence, of course they should be held to account. But where, for instance, where maybe violence happens spontaneously as a result of, whatever has happened in a particular locality, because we also know that elections are largely local and candidates are, single individuals. Is it really likely that we'll say that, a violence that happened in maybe an unlikely remote area, that a candidate maybe who is in a city or maybe at right here in the Federal Capital Territory can be held accountable for that sort of violence?
Absolutely. People can be held accountable and should be held accountable. The question is, who holds them accountable? Is it the mandate of the Peace Committee? I think to that extent, we could be doing too much. There are enough agencies and institutions at the local government level, at the state level, at the national level that have already been mandated by the Constitution to hold people to account.
Yeah, but realistically speaking, will you say it is realistic to actually say that, if violence occurs in any area, at any campaign event, they were going to be holding candidates responsible? Is it a realistic expectation? I think that's the question I'm trying to pose.
I think for me it's idealistic.
It's idealistic.
Realistically, looking at the structure and the way Nigeria is really very challenging.
Yeah.
Security agencies are overstretched with all kinds of problems of insecurity that are already existing, and these campaigns are already taking place within the context of existing insecurity of different forms and types. And that's why even INEC are struggling with establishing, the Electoral Offences Commission and all that. So idealistically, it is supposed to be. Realistically, it's very, very, challenging. But for us at the Peace Committee, we hope that the accord can be used as a piece of evidence in the court of law during judicial processes. And that even members of the Peace Committee could be called to testify if things really get bad. And I think that is the contribution, we can make. We have enough agencies within the country that have been empowered by law to take action. And that's why when we collate and we get all the evidence and the data, we hand them over to INEC and to other agencies that are responsible for enforcing the law.
Father, let me take you up on the issue of accountability. And I'm just wondering, you know, you had made reference to INEC trying to, you know, push through the establishment of the Electoral Offences Commission. So I'm wondering, in your mind, because some people have said that that is a duplication and it is totally unnecessary. They believe that the security agencies are well equipped and can do the job, and it is a total creation of, you know, further bureaucracy, because there have been questions as to when they're not monitoring elections or, you know, prosecuting electoral offenders, what will they be doing, and how we're supposed to be cutting costs right now rather than, you know, increasing the cost of governance. These are all the issues. These are all the things that increases the cost of governance. To your mind, monitoring what, as you have monitored in the last couple of elections, off cycle, and even right in season of a major cycle of elections, do you think that the establishment of this Electoral Offences Commission is necessary?
I think for me it's necessary, particularly if the mandate is going to be very specific to deal with criminal activities that are directly related to the elections. Maybe there could be other activities that are related to campaigns and rallies that are purely criminal in nature, that the police can actually, you know, straight on deal with that, like what has happened in Zamfara, like what has happened, you know, in Kaduna even. So some of these issues is how to make them more specific. But on the broader side, it's just the fact that there's massive loss of trust in different institutions across this country. Otherwise, for example, why should the Peace Committee even exist in the first place? Why should they even sign an accord? It is simply because the institutions mandated by law, either police or others, have simply failed and people have lost trust. And people are now literally appealing to moral intervention, either appealing to traditional rulers, appealing to former heads of state to please use your convening power to get across. Otherwise, there will be breakdown of law and order. And I think that that loss of trust, that trust deficit is what the problem could be. We have enough laws actually in the country. At the
national level, you have already signed a peace accord. That's correct. But we know that at the 2023 elections, it will be more than the presidential elections. Yes, all eyes usually are on the presidential elections. But then we have governorship, we have you know, houses of assembly, etc. For you, do you think it's also going to be necessary to get the governors involved in this?
Absolutely, it's very necessary. There are certain elections that generally people don't even pay attention to. They may not even generate lots of violence, maybe that of a senator or a federal house of representative or so. But governorship and presidential are very key. These are the types of elections that attract violence. So for the Peace Committee, we have a mandate to intervene in off-season elections. That's why we're in Anambra, we're in Ekiti, Osun, Edo, you know, Bayelsa, Kogi, and even Ondo State. In fact, if you look at the tension in Anambra, people thought the elections in Anambra was not going to happen. IPOB had called for a seat at home and all that. But through the instrumentality of the Peace Committee, we were able to bring all the candidates together. The Anambra State elections, you know, went off peacefully. So we are working to support even state elections. And that's why we're establishing what is called the independent state-based peace architectures that work together with the Peace Committee at the national level. The Peace Committee doesn't have the gift of bilocation. They can be everywhere during general elections. So we activate these independent state peace architectures. Like Kanu, they have been working very effectively. We have done so in Taraba, in Gombe, in Adamawa. And I think that is the contribution that we can make so that if there are certain issues that may emerge in certain states, they can call on the Peace Committee members and they can use their convening power to see what kind of support they can offer to those states.
Back to the issue of accountability, the security agencies are largely saddled with the responsibility now of bringing to book anyone who breaches the peace. In Zamfara, for instance, one person is reported to have lost his life and 18 people were reported to have been injured in that scenario. Would you say that our security agencies understand the magnitude, the weight of the responsibility that have been thrust on their shoulders?
I think when it comes to security agencies, a lot of us Nigerians have forgotten that these security personnel are also human beings like us. They have families, they have children. But when you hear that 30 police officers have been killed or 30 soldiers have been killed, we move on as if their own duty is actually to go and die. They suffer the same inflation, the same lack of salary, the same lack of facilities and infrastructure, but every time we expect these people to go and, perform miracle. I think, in my opinion, it will absolutely not happen. They must receive the training, and at the moment, they're actually saddled with all kinds of responsibilities. Banditry, terrorism, kidnapping, agitations left, right, and center. And at the same time, we expect them to provide security during elections. Which one will they actually attend to? In a very context that so many people, including security personnel, are completely dispossessed. So it's going to be very, very tough. And we are not going to expect them to perform miracles. They can only do their best. That is for the love of the country, if some at all have any love left for Nigeria.
What are your fears? I mean, looking into I don't want to say looking into a crystal ball because you're a priest, but looking at what we already see for the 2023 elections, the Peace Committee came into existence prior to 2015 elections because it saw that there was a formidable opposition at the time, and that it was likely. This is my own thinking. It was likely that one person could take over from the other, or the results could be in dispute. And, there was just general tension in the air, which was, really, really strong. And that was what birthed the Peace Committee. Now we're changing, how will I put it now? The time of the incumbent is over. It's like a fresh slate. I mean, he won in 2019. There was some argument, but it wasn't too bad. In 2023, he is no longer contesting. President Muhammadu Buhari is not on the ballot. It's, it's a free-for-all, so to speak. And we see that there are major contenders for these elections. From where you sit and from what you can project, what are the challenges that you foresee? And where do you think that we should be paying attention to as Nigerians who desire peace for 2023 elections?
What I'm going to tell you is my personal opinion. Is not the opinion of the National Peace Committee at all. It's my personal analysis from my travels and from my observations. This thing is happening within the context of regional agitation. And my biggest fear is that the elections is forming a fanatical groups of young people, or generally Nigerians, in support of one candidate or the other. And my greatest fear is that the elections could turn out to be very regional. And whether one region will accept to concede is going to be a big problem. And if they do concede, how they are going now to deal with the fanatics that have been emerged. The next few months will be very, very critical. Whether you go on Twitter, on social media, whether you travel by road, every region seems to have made up their minds who really they want to vote. And it doesn't matter what some key people, senior stakeholders are saying at the national level. You need to go to the grassroots and talk to ordinary people. If you're in the northeast, or you're in the southwest, or you're in the southeast, everybody seems to have made up their mind, and in a very fanatical way. And for me, this is my greatest fear for this country. And it is happening in the context of agitation, either for independence, either to go their own way. And if a person from your region doesn't win, how do you react? Will you accept to remain part of Nigeria? For me, this is my greatest fear.
It's a major issue because when you look at the front runners, they're from three distinct parts of the country, and so there have been quite. Maybe I should even say four distinct parts of the country, because if you look at the major four right in front, the candidate of the APC, PDP, you have North-South, and then the candidate of the Labour Party, he's from the Southeast, and the candidate of NNPP, he's from the Northwest, and then the candidate of the PDP is from the Northeast. So you have certainly, will I say, put a problem or identified a major challenge in front of us. How the votes will eventually go is really unclear.
Absolutely, because I just returned from Adamawa State. I drove from Yola to Ganye. I didn't see a single poster of Peter Obi, for example, the Labour Party. If you go to the southeast, his posters are all over the place. When we're in Ekiti and Oshun, that of Tinubu is simply all over the place. And it's the same thing when you go to Kano and others. This is the Kwankwaso, it's all over the place. So my greatest fear that this is taking a regional, process. And if there are people in certain regions who are agitating that they either get the presidency or they become independent, and this fanatical colony of young people or voters are being formed, then the Peace Committee now will have to see what kind of strategy we are going to deploy to mediate if things really don't go the way we expect. But finally, I think we have to call on the political elite. There has to be a bipartisan, a kind of cross-party strategy on how to keep this country together.
Okay, so you think that we need to reach out to the political elites themselves?
Absolutely.
What about the people? For people who are concerned, because the truth of the matter is, much as it might be convenient to divide, the country into these regions, people of all ethnicity and of all, faiths reside in almost every region of the country. You go to the southeast, you find people from the north, people from the southwest living there. You go to the southwest, it's the same thing. The north, etc. It is that way. There is always a melting pot in almost every state that you visit in Nigeria. And for these people, they're people of goodwill, so to speak. How can we begin to sensitize the people of goodwill that they have a responsibility? Because oftentimes the Sultan will say that, the country is a country, it's a battle, oftentimes, the battle on security is a battle between good and evil. How do we begin to conscientize people that if you mean well for this country, if you're a person of goodwill and you want to see good for this country, this and this is what you should be doing? How can people begin to de-escalate tension even within their own communities?
The thing is that, as you say, it's a melting point, but it's a melting point only to the extent that you are seeking survival. You want to survive. You want to get money. You want to get food for your family. But when there's real violence and violent conflict emerges, that's where the fault lines will also appear. Indeed. And that's why even in Yoruba land, for example, it's possible houses could be attacked, even if they have lived there for 30 years. In the north, Igbos who must have lived there for 40 years could still be attacked, especially during violent conflict. How do you really sensitize them? As you say, is it realistic? It's still idealistic, because the issues in this country are very, very structural. For people, where will their next meal come from? And so if the person in my place is the one I vote for and who will give me my next meal, so be it. And the reason is that because we have not cultivated a common citizenship in this country. What does it mean to be a Nigerian citizen, for example? It's really very difficult. It's more about, over the years, I return to the womb of my tribe, my religion, because this is the people that have helped me secure a job. These are the people that have helped me give me the food that I need or the promotion that I've needed over the years. And so they have become like the nation to me rather than Nigeria as the country. And these fault lines appeared really very strongly during elections. How we are going to sensitize them, it will take a lot of time. Short term, medium term, and long term. And we need a president that can help us cultivate a common citizenship so that you can move to any part of this country. You don't have to be an indigene or a settler. You are simply a Nigerian. And you have the rights and privileges that the Nigerian citizenship provides. And until we have that, one election cannot deal with that. I'm sorry if I sound pessimistic, but...
Well, we all cannot afford to be pessimistic. And if you're painting a realistic picture, it is what it is. I mean, it only shows the extent of work that we have to do on our hands. So I'd say on this note, good luck to all of us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for coming on Hard Copy tonight, Father Atta Barkindo.
Thank you for having me. I always look forward to that. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Well, that's the program tonight, but your feedback is welcome. What are your fears and what will be your contribution towards peace as we go into the 2023 elections? Please use the handles showing on your screen. Thank you for watching. I'm Malpo Ogun Yusuf. Good night.